All right, we'll get started with the third section. Here is the focus question. Blacks played a leading role in the abolitionist movement. Northern blacks attracted to Garrison's opposition to colonization and his demand for equal rights were half of the Liberator's subscribers. Several blacks were leaders of the American Anti-Slavery Society, and Northern-born blacks and fugitive slaves such as Frederick Douglass quickly became major organizers and speakers. Many fugitive slaves published accounts of their experience of slavery, which became powerful tools in communicating the reality of slavery to Northern audiences. Uncle Tom's Cabin, a novel published by Harriet Beecher Stowe in 1852, was based on one fugitive slave's life and sold more than 1 million copies in only a few years. Even though abolitionism was the first racially integrated social movement in American history and the first to make equal rights for blacks central to its agenda, the movement could not avoid the racism prevalent in white America. White abolitionists did not entirely free themselves of racial prejudice. They monopolized key decision-making positions and resources in the movement. By the 1840s, black abolitionists, frustrated with white control, started to hold their own black abolitionist conventions. Some, like Henry Highland Garnet, departed from the white movement by calling for violent resistance to slavery. Nevertheless, white and black abolitionists did mount legal and political campaigns against racial discrimination in northern states. They had a few victories, including ending school segregation in Massachusetts. Black abolitionists in particular challenged whites to recognize blacks as equal citizens and fellow human beings, and they undermined intellectual and cultural arguments for white supremacy. Black abolitionists took every opportunity to reject the nation's pretensions as a land of liberty, and many reversed the common association between the United States and freedom's progress. Black communities in the North devised an alternative calendar of freedom celebrations centered on the anniversary of the slave trade ban and West Indian freedom in place of July 4th. Instead, black abolitionists declared Britain the model of liberty and justice after its 1830s embrace of emancipation, contrasting it with United States tyranny. They also connected free black poverty to slavery and insisted freedom possessed an economic dimension. In 1852, Frederick Douglass delivered the greatest oration on American slavery and freedom in Rochester, New York. He focused on the hypocrisy of a nation celebrating freedom on Independence Day while allowing slavery to flourish. Rather than deny the founder's legacy, he drew upon it, arguing that subsequent generations had strayed from a rich inheritance of justice, liberty, prosperity, and independence. He insisted that the United States could only continue its original mission through abolition, which would free the great doctrines of the Declaration of Independence from the narrow bounds of race. Abolitionism initially sparked violent hostility from Northerners who thought the movement threatened to dissolve the Union, interfere with profits originating in slave labor, and overthrow white supremacy. Led by gentlemen of property and standing, usually merchants with economic ties to the South, mobs disrupted abolitionist meetings, destroyed abolitionist printing presses, and assaulted abolitionist activists. William Lloyd Garrison was nearly lynched by one Boston mob. In 1837, the anti-slavery editor Elijah Lovejoy was killed by a mob in Illinois while defending the printing press for his newspaper from assault for printing for the fifth and final time. Andrew Jackson's attorney general allowed abolitionist literature to be removed from the mails. In 1836, when abolitionists flooded the House of Representatives with petitions calling for the emancipation in Washington, D.C., the House adopted the gag rule, which prohibited that body from considering the petitions. The rule was repealed in 1844, in great part due to the efforts of former President John Quincy Adams. By then, attacks on the free speech of abolitionists convinced many Northerners that slavery was incompatible with the democratic liberties of white Americans. Abolitionists broadened their appeal in order to win the support of Northerners who cared little for black rights but could be persuaded that slavery threatened their own freedoms. The struggle to discuss slavery and its abolition in public made abolitionism the first great struggle for free speech in American history. So that was our third section. We'll come back for the last one here in a few minutes.